the local dailies. But let's get into a discussion. Senator Sigei, that is a survey by Infotrack on what Kenyans feel. The country headed the wrong direction. Half or more than half the cabinet scoring a D. You are within Kenya Kwanza. You know the ups and downs, the happenings. Do you agree with the survey?
Thank you very much, and I must admit that I do not want to use the term that was used by my friend Vincent Odwar about the cabinet secretaries being clueless of their ministries.
Those were sentiments by the president.
That's a bit harsh. No, it's okay. It's a bit harsh.
The president used those sentiments on his very own.
He was telling them that I would not really expect you to be clueless. What Vincent Odwara said that the report by Infotrack has said that they are clueless. I, however, don't agree to a greater extent with the report, especially with the ranking itself. But otherwise, in a number of the issues which have been dealt with, it makes sense. Remember, this was August-September report, meaning it is actually within almost the 1 year period with which the Kenya Kwanza government has been in. To some extent, there are areas where they speak to what we also feel. In some areas, no. So I would say I don't agree. If you were to ask me whether I agree or not, I don't agree. But then there are some incidences where if we talk about a 53%, that is above 50%, definitely. And therefore, when you look at the history, where you're coming from, it's not bad.
So where do you place?
Although 53% is not the mark that I would have given to the Kenya Kwanza government performance.
How would you rate?
I'll give them 75 plus.
75 plus.
Yes.
Osotsi, 75 plus from Hilary Sigei. The survey says the country is headed the wrong direction. What do you think?
I think there is some truth in that survey. Because, to be honest, there are two very, very important issues facing Kenyans. There is the issue of cost of living. There is the issue of taxation, high taxation. And ordinarily, when the two variables are high in any country, then you will find the citizens of that country unhappy. So this rating confirms the feelings of many Kenyans that because of the escalating high cost of living and because of the increases, continued increase in taxation, they feel the pain, and that definitely will result into the kind of displeasure that we are seeing in the rating. So really there is a basis of that. Whereas Kenya Kwanza can say that they have managed to do one or two things, which I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to look into that. The elephant in the room is actually those two issues. That when the cost of living is very high, when cost of essential commodities are very high, and when people go to their pay slips and they see that is increased taxation, and they go to their shops and they see there is increased prices of commodities as a result of taxation, definitely that displeasure will be there. So this rating of 53% Kenyans saying they see the country in the wrong direction, I think it's justifiable. And then on the other hand, we don't seem to be getting some hope from the same government, because we see a government that is continuing with the election campaign. Every day they are on the campaign trail. They are making fresh promises, promise after promise, and they will barely have time to work. And that makes Kenyans feel like the country is in the wrong direction. When you talk about the performance of cabinet secretaries, I want to fully agree with the pollster that Professor Kindiki has been the most focused cabinet secretary. And Kenyans see that. He's not talking politics. He's moving around the country, trying to sort out insecurity issues. But majority of the cabinet secretaries are basically doing politics. When you see the deputy president getting a D, that is a message from Kenyans that please can you sit down and work? Because the deputy president has become the propagandist of this government. Every day you hear him talking about Raila Odinga, talking about Kalonzo, and making statements that do not befit the person who holds the position of the deputy president. So I don't know what happened to the cabinet secretaries, because the letter and spirit of the constitution was that persons holding the cabinet secretary position were not supposed to be involved in day-to-day politics. But we see in this administration, we see cabinet secretaries and even the speakers of the two houses, Moses Wetangula and Kingi, being involved in partisan politics.
And that is something...
And they're supposed to preside over a house that is supposed to make critical decisions for this country.
And oversight.
Then we have a problem. I would expect that the president will sit down with his team, sit down with his cabinet secretaries and tell them, look here, leave politics to politicians and focus on your work. And do your work the same way Kindiki is doing. For a long time, I have not had Kindiki going around addressing rallies or even making political statements. And even my friend Murkomen has really tried in focusing on his job. But the rest of the people in the cabinet, and the speakers of the two houses, and even key people within government institutions who are supposed to be neutral in politics, who are supposed to be focused, they are engaged in the politics of the day, which is not a healthy thing for this country and which creates this kind of disappointments from Kenyans.
Thank you. Thank you. And Senator, we shall be coming back to that disappointment because the Daily Nation has spoken to the Prime Cabinet Secretary and he says something to suggest that these are short-term pains, but we should look at the bigger picture, the long-term gain, and that we shall be discussing. But it already sets the basis of our conversation. Two senators from two extremes, I say. One, Kenya Kwanza, the other, Azimio La Umoja, One Kenya Coalition, Hilary Sigei and Godfrey Osotsi, who are here in studio to help us break down 1 year of President William Ruto from their own perspective. And at this point, we take our first break on AM Live. When we come back, we delve deeper into the conversation. All right, you're watching M Live NTV on the exact day that President William Ruto was sworn into office 1 year ago. That is 13th of September 2023. And today we are discussing his scorecard, his performance. And this we are doing from the eyes of two senators who sit on both ends of the political divides. One within the ruling Kenya Kwanza coalition, the other within the Azimio coalition. And we shall get an honest feel of what they feel about this government. Because, gentlemen, this is how candid this conversation is supposed to be. We are saying 1 year of better being bottom-up economic transformation agenda and worse. And William Ruto's first year as president of Kenya. And Sigei, Osotsi had commented on the ministers and who he thinks does well, who he thinks is still lagging behind. And the president has time and again repeated that he wants, executive oversight, or the parliament to oversight the executive. We have seen ministers appear before the House. So we are at a point where even Kenya Kwanza members of parliament are allowed to comment on what they think about ministers and the people in the executive. We've seen the National Assembly call out some of the cabinet secretaries. In your assessment, and according to what Osotsi said, how are the ministers performing? You can actually name who you think is performing well and who you think should have their socks.
Well, thank you. Actually, looking at page 5 of the Daily Nation, where we're making reference to the report by Infotrack, they have listed Professor Kindiki, Kithure Kindiki, Professor Kithure Kindiki, Aden Duale, Kipchumba Murkomen, and Ezekiel Mashogu. Those are the 4 which, according to them, have done very well. I would agree with this scorecard, particularly with regards to the CS for interior and the CS for transport. And I would say so for 2 reasons. One is on the basis of what I, as a person in the streets out there, experiences in the role of that particular ministry. When you look at Kindiki's performance over time, he has been reaching out to those areas where we have for a very long time been complaining. The visits to Nyayo House, where we have challenges with regard to the timelines within which we get our passports, because we need to travel, we're looking for work and all that. That has been where noise is coming from. And he has made deliberate efforts to have a first-hand experience of what he is also supposed to do as a CS. Remember, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, he actually commented that this is a den of corruption. That in itself directly impacts on his performance, and that's why we have this report. Secondly, when you look at also his visits out there to the insecurity areas, the border between Elgeyo Marakwet and Pokot, Baringo, and direct engagement with the people. A number of snapshots of his visits to the branches where the askaris are normally out there, where families have suffered and all that. That tells you he's in touch with his ministry at a very personal level, and that's why we have this. To my friend, Kipchumba Murkomen, I was over the weekend with him in the field, assessing the performance of contractors in my county Bomet, where we indeed did what I would say personal experience in terms of the quality of work that a contractor who is on site is doing, so that if there is any query, it is not to the contractor, it is not to the area member of parliament, it's not to the governor, it is directly between the cabinet secretary and the contractor in terms of what is the extent of the evaluation. That way, it tells directly why you can be rated to some level, because you have that direct interaction. The other day when we were running through the climate summit, you saw the presentations by the various ministries. We are looking at the smart cities. We are looking at the challenges that we have with our roads in terms of the accidents. What are the efforts the government is putting in place? This tells you these cabinet secretaries are directly involved with their ministries and they have personal knowledge. When Murkomen talks about what's happening in for example, the port of Mombasa, it is something that I, as a legislator, wouldn't tell unless I have that personal involvement in it. So their performance, yes, I would say it's doing very well. Mashogu attempted to also stabilize the teething problems that were in the CPC program that came in. He's also managed to stabilize the challenges that we've had with the funding, the new funding structure, the new funding system, and the admission to the universities. So these are some of the direct the direct experiences that gives them the head start. It gives them a platform of performance compared to the others. And so, well, this probably could be one of those areas I say Infotrack has given us
a true depiction. You agree about their
picture of the performance of the cabinet.
You agree on their depiction on how cabinet secretaries have performed, but you disagree on how the government, the direction the government is taking.
I disagree in the direction the government is taking, particularly with reference to the high cost of living and also their employment. Remember, these are continuing thing. It is not like a one-off thing. It's not like a cup of coffee that you just, instant solution. It takes time. The cost of living is a story that takes a period of time. When we talk about bringing down the cost of living, for instance, we will need to talk about the efforts the government has put in the agriculture sector. Because when we are able to say we can buy a 2 kg packet of unga at a price of 150 shillings, it's parallels to so many other things. When we talk about the cost of living, we don't say it's something that you get into a shop, get a price tag, place on it, buy it, and that is it. It's as a process. Similarly, the unemployment story is a process. The government has attempted, by the way, it has tried to improve. When we are talking about 1 million plus creation of job opportunities, what are these things that the government has done? And we can talk about them. The ICT sector, remember the government is pushing. In the health sector, the government is pushing for what we used to call the voluntary health promoters. Actually, there's a term that's being used now, HPs, where we are saying the government is looking at creating up to 100,000 jobs. Previously, they were there, but they were voluntary. They were not being paid. Right now, the government is aimed at paying them a stipend and supplying them with also equipment for purposes of delivering. So we are in the right trajectory in job creation. We're in the right trajectory in bringing down the cost of living. A few of areas which we haven't improved, we can name them. I mean, that is a fact. But otherwise, in terms of what the government has done to bring down the cost of living, we are on a positive trend. We've just harvested a lot back in Rift Valley, where I come from. I'm very sure it is not about stories. These are facts, and facts speak for themselves.
Yes, facts speak for themselves, as you're saying, but also, see, Kenyans would say there was the timelines that the government gave. When William Ruto was campaigning, he personally set his own deadlines. That the cost of unga, I remember in a Thanksgiving ceremony in Maua, the cost of unga would be lowered in the next couple of days. You know, the Nikiweka Biblia Chini and other short stories. Yet 1 year later, what we are hearing from Sigei, what we are reading from the Prime Cabinet Secretary is, guys, take the short-term pain because the long-term gain will be more beneficial. When is this long-term gain coming, according to where you sit?
Well, precisely, you know, one of their major challenges that they are facing is that they gave Kenyans hope, and hope was timed. I remember they were using 6 months. If you look at their manifesto, you see 6 months, 3 months, 1 year. But 3 months came, it elapsed. 6 months came, it elapsed, and now it's 1 year. And at every stage, there were more promises, more excuses, more explanation. On the issue of cost of living, you know, I remember vividly that even before the real campaign started, when William Ruto and his Tangatanga team were moving around the country, they used to, I remember one Mount Kenya member of parliament, I think that must have been Kimani Ichung'wah, telling people of Central that Uhuru is giving us roads. We don't eat roads, we eat food. That the expressway is too expensive. That money should be given to people to buy food. But now that scenario has changed. They are unable to deal with the problem of cost of living. And if you look at the solutions or the measures that are put in place to address it, they are in fact not viable. For example, you saw that as part of the measures to address the problem of cost of living, they made a decision to import foodstuffs through the National Trading Corporation. And that has become a scandal because the way they did the procurement, the way even the costing of the foodstuff was much higher than even local prices. So we have issues like fertilizer. There are a lot of issues around it, that this fertilizer was actually donated to Kenyans for free by the Russian government. Now here, they are telling us they have been able to reduce the cost of fertilizer to 2,500. But they have not been able to address that concern, that this fertilizer is actually supposed to be given for free, because it was given free to the people of Kenya. And in most cases, you had farmers even complaining that the efficiency of that fertilizer is in doubt. They have to mix it with some other fertilizer for it to work. So those measures they are put in place to address cost of living, for example, the issue of the deal, the petroleum deal between Kenya and Saudi Arabia, was meant to ease the pressure on the dollar, and therefore help in reducing the cost of living. It has backfired. You saw the CS, Chirchir, and even the CS for Treasury saying it is not a viable deal. And yet the government has put in a lot of money. They have signed bilateral agreements with the government of Saudi Arabia. So really, these are the frustrations that Kenyans go through, and they are saying, we don't see any hope. Because they are being told, relax, something is being done, but when you see these kind of policies that are not viable, that even some within the same government are taking advantage for selfish gain. For example, the importation of foodstuffs.
Yes.
You heard that people within the government are the ones who are given tenders.
Including edible oil.
Including even a cabinet secretary in charge of that ministry. So these do not inspire any hope among Kenyans. And that's why Kenyans are saying we are losing hope. The other factor is when you see a government that has issues, which is supposed to settle down and deal with the issues, engaging in day-to-day politics. They have come out of their cars, they're now on their sunroof every day, telling Kenyans about how Raila Odinga is bad, how Azimio, how they defeated Azimio. Kenyans are not interested in that.
But
Kenyans are interested in, one, them making sure that the promises they made to Kenyans are fulfilled. Number two, focus on the job, because elections are 4 years to come. If we go into active campaigning now, because us in the opposition, we have now decided that now that they have decided to come out, we are also vigorously going to come out.
But Mheshimiwa, to be
and
honest,
that means
to be fair on the president,
the country is going to be in an election mood
but to be
for
fair
the
on the
next 4 years.
president,
And
to
there
be
will
fair
be
on
no
the president, Mheshimiwa Sotsi, yes, he is up and about across the country, and that is something we've tried to assess and see. Is he campaigning, or actually, you know, as president, he is required to, I mean, he's free to move across the country. His mandate as president allows him to move across the country. So are we fair when we say the president is campaigning? Because a counter argument may be, do you want him to stay in the office? And remember, it is that premise of not going to the people that was used to sort of dislodge Uhuru Kenyatta from central Kenya. So perhaps William Ruto is also being smart politically?
No, you see, they are being reactionary. Why I'm saying they're being reactionary is that the members of Azimio have clearly come out and told Kenyans that we have a serious problem with cost of living. We have a serious problem with taxation. And really many Kenyans have lost hope. Now, to react to that, they have now decided that they need to go to the people. They need to go to the people. And going to the people, their strategy is let's go to the people and launch projects. They know that in this 1 year, they have not done so well. They basically don't have projects. So now what they do is that they now ask governors, can you give us a list of projects?
I hate to intervene.
No, wait.
But I think you must allow me to interject on that. I've listened to my colleague, Senator Sotsi here. I have known him to be a very modest man, but I think he's missed the point completely today. It's begun with fertilizer. Fertilizer stories is something that I would not expect a sober Kenyan to say it is not the best thing that ever happened to this country. It began from a policy level where the government, Kenya Kwanza, said, look, we do not want to do what the previous government did. We don't subsidize on consumption. Let us subsidize on production. And the first thing that they did was rejected outrightly by my colleagues in the opposition. But the fertilizer story is a success story. I'm so surprised. The other day when the president was in Western Kenya, we were celebrating, including his kin. The unfortunate thing is that Osotsi wants to just oppose, even on those very positive
So how do you respond to those
yes,
to the allegations that this was a donation that is indeed being sold?
It wasn't. I mean, surely. You see, the unfortunate thing is that we speak when we do not have info. We speak without facts. When the media reported the story about this being a donation, it didn't reach out to establish why that statement was made and why the government even never bothered to respond to it. I mean, surely, KNTSC did what it was meant to do. The government policy came out. we could not have been talking about the price coming down from 6,500 to the first 1,500 in the first batch, and now 2,500. In terms of what it has done, my brother, we sometimes need to be very honest to ourselves, to the Kenyans we represent. We are leaders. We are speaking on a national television. Mm-hmm. All Kenyans know the impact of this fertilizer, both in terms of quality, in terms of its availability to the people of Kenya, in terms of what it has led to in production. Mm-hmm. I mean, Western Kenya, where my brother comes from, is an agricultural zone. Where I come from is agricultural zone. The fertilizer story is a success story, and we cannot tell Kenyans otherwise. Mm-hmm. We just need to be very honest about it. And two, its cost has come down. There was no free fertilizer. You know, Kenyans, we've lived in this story of free things. Everyone, including myself, would love to have something free. But remember, the president told Kenyans, including even the Hustler Fund, that you definitely can't expect to get it free. Even if it is coming with a very modest interest rate, you must repay it. Otherwise, where else is the government getting money? That is why when you talk about taxes, where my brother here is complaining that there is the biggest problem that we have had, the taxes is high. Where else can the government get money? We are trying to say, let us not rely on foreign debt. Let us not borrow, even to the basics. Let us contribute from what we get. One of the main reasons why we are progressively growing and changing the economy is because the moment Kenyans are willing, as they are right now, to pay taxes, we become self-reliant. We entirely can budget on the basis of what we can get. The reports we are getting about KRA are positive. So let's not make Kenyans also feel like they don't know what they are doing. It is not that Kenyans are hopeful. I do not know who Honorable Sotsi is speaking about. Kenyans are very positive.
Honorable Sotsi is a people's representative.
Kenyans are very positive. Kenyans are optimistic. A good number of Kenyans are optimistic. In terms of agriculture, there has been improvement. The only area that I would allow Sotsi to probably comment and say we are still struggling is the energy sector. I also feel the pain. We haven't been able to bring down the cost of fuel. But remember, Sotsi, we are not in control of the source of energy. I mean, the international market is controlled by other factors which Kenya cannot. I mean, the fossil fuel is one of the most expensive things. Sure. And I would really expect him and the rest of us to say, let us go the green energy way. And that is why we were hosting the climate summit. Yes, the climate summit.
I'll allow Sotsi to respond, and then later on we'll play two up sounds. One from President William Ruto while speaking about the economy, and two from Angela Mbitho on why Kenyans feel the country is headed the wrong direction. But Sotsi, a response to what Sige is saying. Sige is saying you're not being honest, that the country is headed the right direction. But I also have a question for you, Sige. You're saying we can only... the reason why taxes are high is because Kenyans expect service delivery. An option then would be, one would argue, then expand the tax base, seal the loopholes, which we haven't seen happening. What we are saying is my pay slip continues to be eaten and eaten into more and more. Osotsi.
Let me tell you one thing. You know, it is this kind of changing the goalpost or inconsistency that is making Kenyans not have any hope with this government. Because as Sige says, talks about fertilizer. You know, the elephant in the room is that this fertilizer is the idea that they have reduced the fertilizer price to 2,500 is not sustainable, because the fertilizer they are dishing out at 2,500 is a donation from the Russian government. And I want to challenge.
I've said that.
Let me tell you, I want to challenge Sige that let them respond as a government to this issue of free fertilizer having been given by the Russian government. They have not responded. There is no single government response on this issue,
because it is not.
And this is.
But isn't it the work of a responsible government then?
Let me just
to address these concerns.
Let me just continue. Let me just continue, because I want to put the record straight. You see, we are concerned because when the stocks for the Russian fertilizer finishes, what happens? We revert back to the higher prices. So it's not sustainable. So when they say we have succeeded because we have reduced the cost of fertilizer to 2,500, Kenyans are not fools. They are able to internalize these things and say no. And that is why we are saying they are taking advantage of the misfortunes Kenyans are going through for selfish interest. For selfish interest on issues of fertilizer. Can we get full disclosure? Issues of importation of petrol, the deal, government to government deal. Can we have full disclosure? We cannot just be engaging in half measures, saying we want to deal with the cost of living, we want to deal with this, and then we come up with measures which Kenyans don't see the results. And we are here saying we need more time. The other issue is the issue of taxation. Let me tell you, no country in the world has ever succeeded through overtaxation of its citizens. There is always a negative effect of overtaxation. Because if you overtax, chances of tax avoidance, tax evasion will go higher. So I want to agree with you that they need to change tact and probably focus more on how to seal the loopholes for revenue management instead of going for overtaxation, because overtaxation will have an effect on the economy. People, right now, companies are relocating from Kenya because of high taxation. And when companies relocate, what happens? The level of unemployment goes up. And if the level of unemployment goes up, it means the level of poverty goes up. And that affects the performance of the economy. And so what needs to be done? And this Kibaki demonstrated to us. When Kibaki came to power, he did not increase taxes. He simply ensured that we had efficient tax management, efficient collection measures in place. And he was able to manage the economy using that money. When they talk about they want to overtax so that they don't borrow, I want to tell you, within this 1 year, the Kenya Kwanza regime has borrowed more than what Uhuru borrowed within 1 year.
I see Sigei wants to interject.
So, whereas on one side, and you remember they told us during the campaign that they will never...
Allow me to just...
Let me finish. Let me finish before you come in. They told us during the campaign they will never borrow. They told us they will focus on renegotiation, rescheduling of debts, and they will never borrow. But they have not, they are now borrowed more than...
They will never borrow.
Yes, they said that.
That is why I say...
You have clips, you can run them. You have clips, you can run them.
I think we'll get to them.
They said
Sigei wants to respond. But Senator, before you respond, there are two up sounds that I want us to play, but that perhaps I'll allow you to respond and then also react to the bites. And Jackie, if we have the two up sounds, maybe we can start with President William Ruto on the economy when he was addressing Parliament and laying his legislative agenda. Then, in quick succession, we can as well play Angela Ambitho's reasons yesterday that she gave on that interview by James Smart on why Kenyans are feeling the country is heading the wrong direction. Jackie.
To flourish and form the foundation of broader economic transformation while catalyzing the widening of the national revenue base. Our agenda here is to take necessary measures to create an enabling environment for business people to thrive and decriminalize enterprise. Affordable credit makes a huge difference in the rate of business growth. Access to affordable credit is like a magic formula. The current Credit Reference Bureau approach of blacklisting debtors is zero-sum, punitive, and has arbitrarily locked millions of business out of the credit system. It is time to shift the formula to a credit scoring system which allows lenders to apply customer segmentation and at the same time end the stigma of blacklisting. We have held productive conversations with operators of the Fuliza and M-Shwari platforms on the modalities of reducing their lending rates. I am happy to report today that yesterday, our engagement finally culminated in undertaking by the platform operators to reduce the cost of credit by 50%, and this is a significant step towards unlocking billions of shillings needed to spur economic activity by once again expanding financial inclusion.
The majority of Kenyans still maintain that the country is headed in the wrong direction. They have been saying this since before the elections. And really, they're also very clear on the things they feel are, affecting that, trajectory.
Right.
The main one is that there are runaway costs against a shrinking wallet. And indeed, there are people who now don't have jobs. They've lost their jobs for one reason or another. I'm sure you know somebody who has.
Yeah.
And over and above that, you see the largesses in government spending. And, the high taxation that is only but now kicking in. In fact, somebody was telling me as I was coming here that people are now joking that the minute you walk out the door as a Kenyan, you already are spending 1,000 shillings because of all the costs that are imbued on your head. So these are some of the things that are coming out of the survey. I think, in fact, when we ask the questions now, there is sometimes, I don't know, a sense of I don't know whether I would call it exhilaration or frustration as to whether really people are listening.
Well, Sigei, listening to what the president said while he was laying the legislative agenda, the both of you were in that house, and also you'll connect this with what you are reacting to as to what Osotsi has said. Many would say the promises by the president, even while laying the legislative agenda, were very, very, he was very promising. But in effort to achieve what he said, what has the government done? What has the government, brought in proposals to Parliament to say, we promised we will do A, this is our proposal on how to do it, so Parliament, please make it, effect it. Was it just hot talk? Would you be comfortable to mention to us that, look, they said they'll do this, this is the bill, this is the proposal, the policies that they are proposing to Parliament to achieve that?
Thank you. Allow me first to react to what Osotsi had made in terms of the life of a Kenyan who is being overtaxed, if I can put it in that context. Listening to the president, he has indeed responded to what Osotsi was saying. He's talked about tax base, enhancing the revenue basket for the government. When we talk about, he's of course said that we had told Kenyans we will never borrow. Nobody said that. And that is why I was insisting that it's good when you're on national TV to be very honest, because history will judge us harshly if and when we juxtapose those statements with what people say. The only thing that this government said is that, look, we do not want to over-rely on borrowing. And that is exactly what it has done. It has insisted and has attempted to stop borrowing without necessarily having a reason to do it. When we began to implement that particular proposal there, my colleagues began the conversation of, oh, you're borrowing, you've gone beyond what Uhuru borrowed. It is this tax base, not tax base, this borrowing ceiling is not to be on the basis of an amount, but should be on the basis which the government actually and the whole world is going across in terms of the GDP. A percentage of the GDP would be the basis of borrowing because you can't otherwise do it. That is one of the things the government has done in order to enhance revenue collection and also avoid entirely relying on borrowing. Number two is what I would call the incentive the president spoke about when we are asking Kenyans. let us pay taxes. There are incentives that comes with it. The other day, when we got the statistics of what KRA has collected from Kenyans, it is not because of what Osotsi would say, Kenyans will run away from borrowing taxes and we will have as many people avoiding taxes or even evading taxes. It is what I would call the trust deficit that every other Kenyan would have on the government of the day. And we don't have that as much, because when you see how your money is to be utilized, you would have a reason to pay to the government the taxes. Then that is what the government is trying to do. It's trying to build the trust on Kenyans that if you give me 10 shillings, it's not going to just go into someone's pocket. It will be put into good use. And the good use is delivery to the services of the people of Kenya. And so the culture the president was trying to give us when he was giving that address is to enhance the trust on Kenyans on the government of the day, and also enhance the saving culture. All this fund which we are talking about, I mean, it doesn't make sense, for example, for a Kenyan who is working, earning 100,000, to pay into NSSF 200 shillings. And that is being termed as savings. The only reason why a Kenyan would be comfortable to pay 200 shillings to NSSF and pay 10% of that salary to another private equity investment or something is because of lack of trust. And that is what the government is building. When you look at these agencies which the president has pushed for their reforms, it is because of enhancing that tax base to put into use and bring up the trust on the Kenyans on the government.
You're putting it, you're putting it in a very flowery and convincing way as you're communicating here, that and it would convince someone to maybe do it.
Yes.
But don't you think that perhaps what leads or gives credence to what Azimio is saying is the communication by government? What you're communicating here is not how government officials are communicating. Case in point, during Housing Fund, perhaps what the country needed was someone to explain why useful it was to them. But we found government officials saying, mupende msipende mtalipa, and sort of chest thumping.
Let me just directly respond to that. You know, it's very easy to reject something. It is very easy to criticize something. There are two different directions to look at it. One, there is one who would be very comfortable to be criticized. Like this government is very happy and ready to be criticized, because the only way you can improve is when you are criticized. You are told you're doing the right thing here, you're not doing the right thing here. It's so easy for my colleague Osotsi here to say every negative story about the government of the day. But
how is that government responding to it?
Yes, that is where I'm heading to. Let us settle down to work. Let us do it for the people of Kenya. We have talked about the removal of credit rating, the CRB, where every other Kenyan, where you have borrowed Fuliza, you had the president say it, Fuliza. We have had an engagement with them, and we have removed Kenyans from being listed from the Credit Reference Bureau. You are able to get it. The Hustler Fund, we don't talk about it. Why? Because it is a masterstroke. It has facilitated the hustlers back down in the villages.
We're coming to speak about the Hustler Fund. Jackie,
yes.
I don't know, and I'm sorry I'm interrupting you. Jackie, I don't know if we can just have just a minute, just a quick break first. Yeah, then I come to you, Osotsi, immediately after this break, because Jackie says we have to go on this break. But when we come back, it is getting interesting on what the both leaders are feeling. And Osotsi was actually moving on his seat as Sigei was speaking. So it will be interesting to know what exactly he wants or how he wants to respond. But let's take that break.
And my administration will serve all without regard to any distinction, real or imagined. Certainly, service delivery under my administration shall be impartial, regardless of political affiliation or voter preference. Kenya is our home, and we remain united as one strong family.
Well, and those are sentiments by President William Ruto on how his administration will render services without discrimination. Only months later, we heard about that statement on government of shares, and people are getting into government basing on the shares they put in. And Osotsi, you were responding to what Sigei was saying. Sigei spoke about a couple of issues on how the government has achieved. You were burning at that time to respond.
Well, you know, my good friend Senator Sigei is on the defensive mode. But I want us to now change the approach to this debate by looking at what they have achieved, assessing it, and what they have not achieved. So allow me just to look at a few things they said in their manifesto and others which they have said outside the manifesto. On devolution, which both of us are defenders of devolution, as per Article 96 of the Constitution. They promised that within 6 months, there will be a complete transfer of all devolved functions to the counties. That has not happened. We still see the health sector is not fully devolved. The agriculture sector is not fully devolved. The water sector is not fully devolved. But what are we seeing from this government? We have seen they have increased the budget for health at the national level and reduced the budget for health at the county level. What are we seeing again? We are seeing them come up with laws which basically are quietly transferring the county functions to the national government function. I want to give you an example. Just about 2 weeks ago, they tabled 3 bills. That is the social health bill, the facility improvement bill, the primary health care bill, and another bill which I can't remember.
And the chronic diseases bill.
Yeah, all these bills, if you read them, and my good friend here, if we put politics aside, will agree with me that those bills should not see the light of the day because they are anti-devolution. They are basically taking over, fully taking over the functions of health
from the counties
back to the national government. They have also published, and I think the National Assembly passed it, the water bill, which basically it's taking over the entire water function to the national government, and yet water is devolved. I have seen even the rice bill, which they have published. It is basically undermining devolution of agriculture. So when we see all this happening, and yet they promise that there will be complete transfer of function within 6 months, we get worried. And then coming to the projects that they are doing, housing is a devolved function. But what are they doing? They are now going around the counties.
They're partnering with counties, to be fair, on matters land and...
Yeah, I'm coming to that. They are going around the country launching the affordable housing program. And the involvement of counties is very minimal. Very minimal. You look at the issue of county industrial parks. That's another devolved function. You see a direct interest by the national government into it. We are seeing the issue of community health workers. Community health workers are those people who help in implementation of primary health care in the grassroots. They are now saying that they want to engage them directly by the national government. Now, the issue of roads and county roads and construction and maintenance, they have taken over. So now, Sigei here knows very well that one of the very important bills that we came up with as a Senate when we joined the Senate was to come up with a bill called the County Additional Revenue Allocation Bill that is supposed to be done every year. What this bill does, this bill says that there are two ways in which the devolved function get money. One is through shareable revenue. Two is through conditional grants. Conditional grants from the national government or from donor agencies. Now, what we did, which has never been there before, is that we came up with this bill so that we can regulate or we can put legal framework on the conditional grants that the donors are bringing or the national government is bringing. So what happens is that if the national government wants to invest in a devolved function or devolved project, the law provides that they do that through conditional grants, not directly. But what we are seeing in the affordable housing project is that they are doing that directly. What we are seeing in the industrial park, they want to do that directly. What we are seeing in the CHVs is that they want to do that directly. What we are saying, if this government is very keen on its promise that there will be a complete transfer of function, what they need to do is that they need to give county governments more grants to do these things and not do them directly. Because the only reason why they want to do them directly is because they have vested interest.
Vested interest again.
I'll come to that. There are individuals who want to benefit from this.
We need to ask Senator to respond.
I'm just going
because
quickly.
You've spoken about devolution.
Before he responds, I'm going through quickly all these things. When you talk about the issue of human rights, in their manifesto, they said within 6 months, they'll come up with a human rights tribunal to ensure that there is no violation of human rights. There is no tribunal. Instead, the recent demonstration, you see clear violation of human rights, police brutality, which the people in government said it is the right thing to do, and yet Kenyans had died. When you talk about corruption,
let's allow Sigei to respond at that point. Then we come to the other points. Because again, to be fair, Senator Osotsi, you're speaking about things that are not done. But there are things that are promised that have been done.
I will come to that.
Speak about the Hustler Fund. It's on. Well, 50% of cabinet for women has not been done. 2/3 gender rule, not yet. Action on corruption, the president has been very strict. Just the other day, he issued the Mambo Matatu statement. That is on corruption. He appointed the judges rejected by President Uhuru Kenyatta on his first day in office. To be fair, he committed to lower on subsidized production and not consumption, which he has done. So these things the president has done. He has returned port services to Mombasa. Sigei,
thank you. You know, my brother Osotsi here is blowing hot and cold, which is very risky. It's very risky. I understand that he's defending his position, which is okay. But when it comes to serious national issues like what we're discussing, it's normally very appropriate not to blow hot and cold. You see, right now, the president has sort of set up the dress code. He's agreed. What he's dressing on is the counter suit that the president has.
this before he started dressing.
You're following the president.
He should follow the president in terms of dress code and the rest. Now, allow me to just say some of these things. And I've said this, and I'll repeat it, that when we are on these issues, he's talked about the 6 months period within which the government of the day has been in office. And he's attempted to raise a number of issues. Let me just go straight to the health sector. Remember, among the 4 main issues this government got into office was to improve the universal health care. And the president said, health is wealth. That is what everyone knows. If you are healthy, you are able to report to work. You will actually deliver from your office or from your farm or from wherever you are working. If you're healthy, you're able to think. And rolling backwards to the rest of all that you're supposed to do as a human being, health is everything. The effort that the president is putting in, the 4 bills which have now been passed by cabinet, the primary health care bill, digital health bill, facility improvement bill, and social health insurance bill. These 4 are aimed at improving the universal health care. Where I come from, Bomet, there is a lot of challenges to do with cancer as a disease that affects, when one member of family is sick, I can tell you, my brother, the rest family members are not able to work. If there is anything that the government can do to improve universal health care and access to health facilities, I would go for it myself. Every day we receive requests, which I'm very sure also receives, for fundraisers, for hospital bills. If the government can improve and avail resources, I mean, the least we can say is to appreciate them. However much we disagree, it is not enough to just disagree for the sake of it or to be in opposition for the sake of it. Let us also give respect and also appreciation where it is due. These 4 bills, once they come to the floor of the House, will help. For instance, like the social health insurance, will give us 3 things. The social health insurance fund, the emergency fund, which is a problem across the country, and also the critical illness. Now, what I've just talked about as rampant in my county. All these things will feed into the universal healthcare program the government is pushing. It is not the interest of Kenya Kwanza government to bring down the benefits of devolution. In fact, the president is the champion, is actually champion #1 of devolution. It is in the history of this country that it is only in this government that 9 months into office, the president has made sure that all the resources which are meant to be released to the counties were released. And he said it the other day during the climate summit that I've got 50 billion lying idle, meaning he has already released all the allocations of all the county governments. What else can you say if not to applaud him for supporting devolution? The only thing that he's pushing for, and he's done it as much, is to fight corruption. And we are all saying we did not devolve corruption. The fight against corruption should start from all over. It is not only limited to the national government and allow the county governments to be corrupt. No. And he's done it. I mean, he's done it. The Kemsa story, that happened. I mean, Osotsi will not want me to say such. Osotsi would want not to see such direct fight on corruption. You have, I mean, you spoke my mind when you talk about the appointment of judges. This is only with regards to governance, by the way, because among the things that we can speak about this government having achieved is, first of all, the transition was very peaceful. Despite the attempts they made in Bomas of Kenya, the president managed to transition in a very peaceful manner, something that we can always speak about from morning to evening. We all saw what the challenges were. In terms of governance, we have it. We can speak. We can speak from the courts, appointment of judges. We speak about availing resources, the judiciary fund, independence, the fund to the police, independence, the reform of the DCI and the investigative agent that had already been swallowed by, you know, they called what? The state capture.
So
that is
some argue
that
that, in fact, Osotsi said that this particular institutions still are under state capture.
And I would say,
the police service. Well, look, the police, we have seen government officials directing what the police service should do. We have seen the government refusing to obey court orders.
There is no single order that this government has.
Finance Act, EPRA.
No.
EPRA continued to...
Well, you know, I'm a practitioner in court. On a daily basis, I do go to court. There is what my colleague in Senate, the senator for Okiya Omtata, filed in court. You cannot be termed to have breached a court order before a finding of the court. Remember, that order came. One of the defenses that the CEO of EPRA is saying is that I was never served. You cannot ignore what you don't know. You cannot be directed to do that which you've not been served and directed to do. And that is something that is now pending in court. There isn't a finding that the court has made about that. I can tell you for a fact, there is no single order that this government has not obeyed. That one you can take to the bank.
All right.
As a practitioner. So we can speak about the positives that Osotsi doesn't want us to speak about in terms of what the government has done. Other than the fact that he's talked about CHVs. You know, he's even talking against the community health volunteers. Something that the government has said as a policy statement. Let us have these volunteers who ordinarily were not paid before to be paid now and to be regarded as community health promoters. And they get paid, they get supplied with equipment. Now, the payment plan about them is that 50% of their salary or wage will be paid by the national government, 50% will be paid by the county government. And equipment that will be supplied by the national government. Their operations will be at the county level, because we are looking at every 100 households, they should be having a ZHP. One, meaning the primary health care, which I spoke about, will be something that we can feel from the ground. Let us not talk ill of a government that is defending and protecting devolution, that they are against it. When they talk about the affordable housing program, for instance, you have put it right. There is a partnership between the national government and the county government. In my county, for example, the county government has been asked to avail land, and that land will not be taken over by the national government. It has been asked to avail land for industrial parks. It has been asked to avail land for other projects that the national government is ready and willing to invest in. I don't understand what supporting devolution means, if not what the government is doing. And from the devolution conference, and Osotsi and I were there, though we had issues as senators in terms of the organization, in terms of the status of the office of Senate that was taken, and everything that had been done in that devolution conference, among the things that the government did was to say there are some of the roles which the county government is supposed to do which have not been done within this time. And for obvious reasons, there are certain legislative programs which must be done, there are laws which must be passed for certain things to happen. But the most unfortunate thing is that my colleague here speaks very ill about that thing, and he does nothing in Parliament.
He does nothing.
He is not brought in any law which has been rejected or which has been passed, and this government has not
And you've
done.
actually taken me, Sige, you've actually taken me to the question that I was to ask Osotsi, because we have a country here. Much as there is the government and the opposition, we have a country that needs to go forward. If we are faulting Kenya Kwanza government for not achieving 1 year down the line, you guys are also partly to blame. For instance, when you needed to stand up to be counted as the opposition, you were never there to stand up to be counted. When you're vetting cabinet secretaries, this happened in the National Assembly, but it is within your coalition. There is a quote from John Buddy that let's give William Ruto his skunk while pushing for cabinet secretaries, that members of parliament from the opposition would judge that these ministers are not fit, but still say, let's give the president his skunk, means, what do you mean for the country? You have also, as the opposition, led the country through anti-government protests that have, to an extent, honestly speaking, destabilized the country. So do you own up, as the opposition, as Azimio, to your contribution for the non-performance, a bit of non-performance of Kenya Kwanza?
You know that's a very unfair question because they had their manifesto. Let them just implement their manifesto. Our role is to tell Kenyans that this is what they promised, this is what they delivered. We are not there to help them in the running of the government. It is their duty to run the government. But that aside, because
it's important, especially during that vetting. Yes, it's not you who said it, but it's members of your coalition
you see,
who vetted and passed cabinet secretaries, some of whom they had issues with, even said, let's give William Ruto his skunk.
Let me react to these issues that he has raised. He has said that we need to help them. We help the government of the day to achieve its agenda. One, I want to categorically say that is not our job. That is their job.
Fairly, surely we have a country.
That is their job. We have a country, yes. But we had our own manifesto, they had their own manifesto. We are not in government. We are out of government. They are in government. So we are judging them by their manifesto. We are not judging them by the performance of the opposition or what the opposition does. Number two, if they decide to give us weak people, incompetent people, and they have numbers, and you have seen what happens in National Assembly particularly, and the Senate, when it comes to voting for anything, they will gang up their numbers and just vote for something that even them themselves think is wrong, but they will vote for it. So we cannot stop them. And I think that was the basis of Mbadi's statement. That if they want the skunk, give them the skunk.
Allow me
to challenge. 30 seconds, we come back to it.
Yes, allow me to challenge Osotsi.
You know, it is not fair. I listened very carefully.
A very brief interjection.
I just wanted to challenge you in terms of what you are saying about the numbers in the National Assembly and the Senate.
Which you are accused of misusing.
Remember, yes, this is what we've done. Part of what the government of the day has done is to amend the standing orders to allow cabinet secretaries to appear before parliament at question time and also to gauge on their performance. What they did, because that's actually what I wanted to challenge him on. First, they went to court. Secondly, they attempted to boycott. Thirdly, when they came in, they're the ones who are ahead in asking questions. Isn't that part of it? Other than create, I mean, isn't that part of what
you
is
see,
supposed
what
to be?
I want my colleague to listen to me, because I take my time to listen to him so that I can bring forward my points. I want to respond to some of the issues that he has raised. Senator Sigei is a very good lawyer and a good reader, and is the chairperson of the
Justice and Legal Affairs.
Jailer Committee in the Senate, which is one of the key committees in the Senate. He has talked about the bills, especially the health-related bills. And I want to challenge him to take time to read those bills. And however good they may look, they violate the Constitution in the sense that they are taking over what is county devolved function to the national government. And that is the basis in which I am against those bills. Yeah? They may have good intention on the surface, but legally they violate the spirit of devolution.
Yeah.
And if we put politics aside and looked at that, then you will begin to understand what I mean. When he talks about community health workers, I am a strong champion of community health workers in my county. I have sponsored most of their activities. But that is a devolved function. We do not, we are not saying that the national government should not support them. They should support them. But the legal mechanism under which that arrangement can be done. Earlier on, I had alluded to the law that we passed together with him, called the County Additional Revenue Allocation Bill, which deals with conditional grants. Because before that bill, we realized that most of the conditional grants that were coming to counties were eaten through corruption. So we decided to come up with that law so that we have a legal framework of managing conditional grants that go to counties. So what the national government should do, let me just finish, in the case of CHEWs, is to give counties conditional grants towards the payment of the CHVs. But now what they want to do, is that they want to finance it directly from the national government. And my friend here knows that that is illegal.
Gentlemen,
that amounts
this
to taking over
this conversation here, I think it's really interesting because we didn't notice how time quickly flied. You'd be disappointed if I said we are closing.
My goodness. We've just begun.
Yes, we just began. And perhaps this is a discussion we need to continue with because the time is now headed to 8 a.m. time for Your World. I know this conversation has ended sort of in an anti-climax, but we shall be continuing this discussion from NTV on our various programs and also the various platforms within the Nation Media Group. Thank you very much for watching AM Live. Gentlemen, Hilary Sigei, Senator Bomet County, Asante Sana, Godfrey Osotsi, Senator Vihiga County. We shall continue this conversation, I promise. This we shall continue with. But right now we have to stop because Winnie Lubembe is up next with Your World.